Greetings and welcome, everyone. We're here today at THOME Rivertown Senior Apartments, it's on the east side of Detroit, right off the riverfront. And I've been doing a lot of work with Jim and Monica. And we just want to welcome you all to the conference of WorldCitiesDay.
I'm not sure if Fadiah is able to hear or speak right now. Jim, do you want to talk about broadband connectivity and how it relates to sustainable development goals?
Probably the most important element is the SDGs in terms of bandwidth and ability to connect to communities and neighborhoods. Maybe Capella, do you have any thoughts along the lines of SDGs and technology?
Actually, we were just talking yesterday, Capella, about your developing curriculum currently for University of Michigan, and that's something interesting around virtual learning and how are we're not really experiencing that in K through 12 environments yet, but we know that kids, anytime we ever engage them with technology, they're all over it. They want to tinker, they want to learn, they want to develop and produce and do things like that. And so could you maybe talk about how you work and what you're in the throes of now developing curriculum and how that project-based learning is an essential skill in the world right now around creativity and curiosity that you're so passionate about on your podcast?
Mm-hmm. I think that people have to know that we care about them in order to learn. So before I have any talk, before I teach any class, before I do any coaching session, I've got to make sure that people know that I care about them, that I think that they matter, that I trust them, that I am out for the best interest. And then I think once an instructor or anyone can introduce these ideas and make people feel like they matter, then learning can commence. And I especially love, obviously the STEAM work that you guys are doing and the work around curiosity. As you know, Monica, pretty much my whole life with my father has been fighting the current system and the injustice and the inequities that exist. And my father was an extremely empathetic, compassionate man who could connect with anyone, and it was because of those skills. So, to answer your question, this idea of digital learning, and I mean, any learning I think can occur best when you know that the person is really there for you. And that's mostly what I can say. And I find it so interesting that leaders or CEOs or teachers or professors or deans, they can do everything they need to do to climb to the tippy top of their game, but they can't climb over the bridge of compassion or empathy.
She's put your sticky over here next to Gen Z, message of climate change, which is a whole new realm of investigation and imagination.
About Gen Z, because that's a hot spot for me. I adore Gen Z, and a lot of the work that I do is, I couldn't believe this when I heard this, because if you would have asked me that how many generations are in the workforce right now, I would say 3, but it's actually 5 that are still in the workforce, and bridging that gap between Gen Z and, I was going to say the older Gen Xers, but let's not, the boomers and the traditionalists are still in, and so that is a large leap.
And we've been really interested in how do we, because the commonality between Detroit, Pontiac, and Flint is, undergoing emergency management and the fallout from that, and water is one of the main sustainable development goals, clean water and sanitation. Maybe Robert, could you open us up and talk about the role of the Citizen District Council in Pontiac and what challenges you had under emergency management?
But as far as the emergency manager, we still have quite a bit of problems that exist from having that emergency manager come in because a lot of our assets were sold off and we're still losing the other assets, even though we're in the, I guess, 8th year after the emergency manager. Uh, but uh, with them having to restructure the whole city all over again, it's causing a lot of us problems because we don't agree with some of the changes. Some of the changes may be necessary or may be good, but they're not inclusive of the whole community input.
Well, on that note, we're gonna open up a Q&A, and we're gonna shift to focus on Flint right now, and then maybe have some more interaction. Capella, I'm gonna just play a quick 1 minute of this Melissa Mays video, and then maybe you and Chico could give us the background to that and what you covered during the NOTOWN documentary.
People of goodwill should stand up right now and holler as loud as they can. They're taking your democracy away. They're taking your democracy away.
But we want to let them know that when it comes down to this water, the line has been drawn in the sand.
Flint lives matter! Flint lives matter! Flint lives make it right! Raise the fight! Make it right! Raise the fight! Make it right! Raise the fight! Make it right! Bring it down so we can make it right! Raise the fight! Make it right!
Really an alarming story. Growing anger over tainted, lead-poisoned water in Flint, Michigan.
I want everybody who is responsible for this fiasco held accountable. I'm not protecting anybody because that's not our job. We are the last line of defense. And if we don't do it, nobody's gonna do it.
We don't have just a water problem, we got a democracy problem. We got a dictatorship problem.
Okay, so I'm one of the lead plaintiffs in the class action lawsuits. Nobody's gotten any money. They're still taking forever, dragging their feet. In the Safe Drinking Water Act case to replace all the lead and galvanized steel service lines, that's also my lawsuit. The current mayor has done everything he could to stop it, and the state is allowing him to do so. Got him in, and so now we filed a motion to in federal court to have him held accountable, or held in contempt, excuse me. The mayor, the city administration, and everything, to finish the service line program that should have been done in 2020. Also, we're pushing for the ARPA funds to be spent properly.
Yes, we are too, yes.
They're not doing our water, we're not doing our water heaters,
Nothing is being spent for anything meaningful for the problems we know that we had.
They asked for $6 million for 2 roundabouts in Flint.
Oh my God, that's what they're doing in Pontiac with the demolishing the Phoenix Center, because they're gonna build a bunch of roundabouts and make a main street connected, and they have no logic for why they're gonna destroy it.
Americans don't know how to drive a roundabout anyway.
Right.
And then also we don't have enough people traveling to Flint.
So either Capella or Chico, if you want to jump in and help us understand the background.
So NOTOWN is a documentary film that began with exploration into Detroit's water crisis. It quickly evolved into an understanding of how emergency management played a role in the shutoffs that were happening in Detroit, and how those shutoffs were directly connected to the Flint water crisis and their emergency management decision to switch water supplies. And what we saw was essentially both efforts cumulatively added up to a coordinated effort to establish legal precedent for dictatorship on U.S. soil. I mean, at the end of the day, that's essentially what we got from it. And the film follows several families and Reverend Pinckney, among other characters, as they fought to try to overturn the legal decisions that were being forced upon the communities and that precedent that was established.
There's a book that I've been wanting to read called Laboratories of Autocracy, and it focuses on that very thing, the democratic just overturning that these little, they don't think people are watching in these little areas, but they're formulating a strategy for what you said, dictatorship on American soil. That's powerful words.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, and you see it in right-wing politics. It plays out across the country in smaller communities with little legislative victories that all add up to major changes and shifts in who we are as a country.
So do you think the world is forcing the situation to become, deeper structured from a neighborhood perspective as opposed to, let's say, the governance?
Well, I think that what we have is struggling duality. There's this notion of society being the Serengeti, where it's just feast or famine, every person for themselves, or a notion that as higher beings, we can collectively organize and provide an agreed upon safety net for all mankind. And those two forces are just locked in this power struggle. And the pendulum swings, it seems, from left to right, from left to right.
So having said that, I think that, brings focus to what we're doing today from the SDGs and side of things, and certainly from the sense of how the impending future that we're facing, particularly with regards to things like climate change and so forth, are actually going to be a decision made by the general population as opposed to its particular persuasion governance-wise.
Yeah.
So there's some hope there. I think what's really amazing is that the UN is recognizing that they don't have the whole story, and they're actively soliciting the information to begin to attempt to retell the larger picture. And it appears as though the things that you just spoke to are there are at least 3 or 4 of those in the 17 SDGs, which adds a good deal of strength to the conversation. It would be my hope that we could take what we have here and the elements that have been described, films and so forth, and constitute a real story that we could submit on behalf of maybe consortium of Flint, Pontiac, and Detroit.
Yeah, I always thought, Chico is our director, cinematographer, and editor, and you can see why he's always had such clear vision and spent a lot of time with my father. So they always, between the two of them, had a very clear vision of what this film was. And I'm glad you brought up that last point, Chico, because the film did change before, pre and post Trump. It also evolved, I will say quickly, that it evolved almost into 3 stories. And the one story was the Flint story and the inequities there. And the other story was Reverend Pinckney, who was a man, he was a reverend, an activist that got convicted and actually sent to jail to do hard time for voter fraud. But the fraud consisted of a petition having someone's name twice, and although he did cross off the name on the second petition, he didn't thoroughly cross off the address. And so that got him, I want to say like 8 years in hard time. And they put him in solitary confinement because they felt like he was an activist and he was at risk of organizing the prisoners for some sort of revolt. But he did get out. He didn't do the full 8 years, luckily. So it's one third Flint, 1/3 Reverend Pinckney in Benton Harbor, Michigan, and 1/3 a story about a woman that experienced losing her home. That was a family home in a very nice area of Detroit that was paid off, but she lost it in a tax sale. And so it follows her story too. So it, and all of these they're almost modular. They could be, told as individual stories, or they could be told as a whole film, but it really kind of helicopters into 3 areas of injustice that was happening kind of simultaneously in Michigan.
So what we have from the middle hope is what is it? Oh, yeah. We have a centerpiece that was happening while this was taking place, which demonstrates the tonality and absurdity of the governance structure. And now we have a time and place that the United Nations is looking for a new way of addressing it. I think what we have is an answer to that. It's what has not been said yet. Not what has been said. That speaks loudly. But what will speak even louder is what is to be said on behalf of communities, on behalf of the SDGs, on behalf of the betterment of the proposition post-Trump. I think that's a compelling narrative and timely. And I don't think anybody else would have, that we would be aware of, would have that kind of broad, vibrant, in terms of messaging importance.
We're really interested in how the United Nations is launching this. It's a $500 billion fund to fund the Sustainable Development Goals, and they understand that local governance can't really be trusted to do these things. As Melissa was pointing out, none of the ARPA funds are going to any of these goals. The fact that nothing's going toward solving those problems it's just shocking. And the same, I was thinking about education. We were talking with Capella and how do we engage kids maybe in being these like investigative units. They're plugged in, they're knowledgeable. If we have a critical thinking and a more free curriculum and pedagogy for kids, the kind of media they could produce in helping communities, just as we were talking over here, the UN, back to talking about media, we've got education just totally bankrupt, not able to perform, just going backwards. They adopted technology during the pandemic, but they tried to deliver the same curriculum and nobody showed up. And so we've got that kind of, that's a well understood proposition now. And then we have UNICEF just did a study about how deeply disengaged young people are in the media ecosystem we have today, in its lack of capacity to cover both climate change reality on the ground and action that could be taken, that they can gear themselves, that they can prepare themselves to participate in helping solve. So wondering what your thoughts are about that. Like, is that something that this fund, the UN fund, should cover?
Well, I think from a broad perspective, like I think of media, visual storytelling as the evolution of telling stories around a campfire. You know, if you think about the growth of humanity, right? From the very beginning, you had the need to convey stories that matter. You know, people needed to know what fruits were safe to eat, what animals to stay away from. And those stories were typically, before they were written, shared around the campfire. And all of the connotations and tools that are used to communicate those stories have evolved into what we know today as visual storytelling. And I think the problem when it comes to conveying those important notions to society comes from who has ownership of the ability to tell those stories. Now, typically it's been large media organizations, which have all been over the past 50 years consolidated into media conglomerates, and they own the stories, and their politics swing from left to right. However, it's still a notion of controlling the mass population with narrative. And so it doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republicans in their ownership of the messaging. At the end of the day, the messaging is the same. I mean, if you take, for example, how the Flint water crisis was handled, at the end of the day, you had both Republican representatives and Barack Obama's administration going there, drinking water on camera, saying that the situation is resolved and everything's fine. And the reality is, it's not fine. What it would take to be fine is a tremendous investment in infrastructure that no one thus far has been willing to make. And with the democratization of the ability to tell stories, I mean, now your cell phone is small enough to capture beautiful images. So a high school student in their house can make compelling media and then share it through social media distribution channels and reach millions. And so now we have the ability to sort of counterbalance the monopoly that I think the media has been under. And so I take passion in using my skill set to try to create media that can convey those notions, that other side of the argument, that other perspective. But it's daunting because, if you look at NOTOWN as an example, it's a film that we began in, I'd say, 2015, around about the time that actually a UN special envoy came to Detroit to investigate allegations of human rights violations, and in fact found that the United States was guilty of human rights violations. And, it didn't really resonate. I don't think it made it beyond Michigan. We talk about human rights violations in China or in North Korea, but yet we ourselves as Americans are charged with equally powerful allegations. So, I'm hopeful in that media and access to technology and the will of the next generation can perhaps affect change, but it's challenging to make media that reaches people at the same time, especially something like this film, because it requires investment, financial investment. And that means getting organizations, other people, nonprofits behind the notion of helping you to tell those stories.
Speaking of citizen science, and we have Fadiah back on with us, and I don't know if she wants to speak or if she can speak right now. So we were having a conversation about the Flint water crisis, and Chico is the director and co-producer and cinematographer for a documentary on Flint and Detroit and Benton Harbor, and the democracy problems, the infrastructure problems, all of that. And this exercise today is about, we're in WorldCitiesDay conference, and we're looking at, they're launching a $500 billion fund to finance these sustainable development goals and to cover the ground that local municipalities have been unable, to say it lightly, to perform on. And broadband is so important to this conversation. So could you tell us a little bit about what you do at Connect 313, and maybe we could explore how broadband helps communities in tackling some of these sustainable development goals from a bottom-up perspective versus just sort of needing to trust a governance system that might not be able to handle all of it or deal with it all.
So I've been working with Connect 313 since April of 2022. I'm the ambassador for District 6. We are a total of 7 ambassadors. Connect 313 was created in 2020 after the pandemic. And there was a section in Detroit that lost internet for 45 days, sorry. And that's how the Connect 313 started. It's a collaboration of the city of Detroit, my Rocket Mortgage Bank, and used to be Microsoft and United Way. Connect 313 open tech hubs in certain areas, in certain places, and you can log into connect313.org to find your local tech hub.
But you know what's interesting is you mentioned seniors, and we're in a senior center.
No, I know you guys are in my mind. It just, I didn't have time, but now I got you. Let me finish off today's Joe Louis Greenway. I think the Warren area ribbon cut, and next week hopefully I'll be all yours.
Oh, awesome!
Oh, beautiful!
Awesome.
We're real big champions of that as well.
And we're up at the Brightmoor Makerspace as well. There's a good deal of opportunity that they're bringing in some of the things that they're doing, build outs of space, and the whole of the Greenway will carry internet.
Yep, free Wi-Fi. I heard. Yep, my sister works with them actually too. So.
Wow, that's good to know.
I want to introduce as well Ms. Hicks, if she could give us a overview. And we were just talking. We just had our first conversation today, and it was very serendipitous that she was connected to these sustainable development goals, and would love if you could share that as well as the work that you're engaged in here.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and hello to everyone. So I was speaking with her through casual conversation probably about an hour ago, and we were talking about the SDGs, and I was just explaining to her that I have a younger child who was a part of a science program in Tech Town, led by Professor Keith Young, and in 2019, we all took a trip to the United Nations. where the children learned about the SDGs and also had the opportunity to discuss SDGs and other goals or concerns with the world. So they were able to speak with the consulates of Antigua, Belize, and Spain. And so that trip was actually a 5-day trip, and they actually just, first of all, we enjoyed it, number one. We were able to take a tour of the entire United Nations, take a tour of where all of the world leaders come together and talk, and we just got all of this information. All of this came out just, again, earlier today, just through casual conversations. So that struck up further conversations with ourselves here today. So I just wanted to just say thank you for allowing me to be a part of it, and also to shift over just a little bit, explain what my role is here at THOME Rivertown. So currently I am the housing administrator, and what we do is concentrate on trying to provide a, for lack of a better term, sustainable quality lifestyle for our seniors ages 62 plus.
In this, it seems like that part of sustainable cities and communities, I can't think of a more important area to keep the social engaging.
Yeah.
And this place is so welcoming and open. We love coming here to hang out with Mama Ravin always. We still have to meet a new friend.
Yeah.
And this building should be a model.
It is.
Really, I mean, it already is, but how do we scale it? How do we
How does Connect 313 help us scale what's happening here?
Yes, Fadiah, maybe.
I've invited her over here sometimes.
Could we explore maybe in the future, like a citizen science, because that's another thing I wanted Mama Ravin to speak about her Herbal Walk and Talk program, because Chico was talking about how important citizen science is to the Flint water crisis and those things, and Mama Ravin's a lead volunteer for the Detroit Rivertown Conservancy, and could you speak a little bit about that, Chico?
She's one of the time bank member. Me and her, we're from the same program.
We love the time bank. We were on the board for the Pontiac time bank for a long time, and they've shifted a little bit, but we're big advocates for time bank.
Good to see you, Fadiah.
Hey, babe.
I'm Regina Lawson, aka Mama Ravin. I'm a Detroit Rivertown Conservancy volunteer, and I volunteer in community areas too. But my program is called Herbal Walk and Talk / Chat and Chew, where I take people out into the wetlands on the Detroit Riverfront, and we discover edible, medicinal, and survival plants that you can actually find in your backyard. Oh, there I am with my crew. And what we do is just, like I said, discover edible, medicinal, and survival plants that everybody can find in your backyard in case we have some kind of crisis. Only go on a 4-block radius, you'll be able to sustain yourself by going into your backyard and finding food to take care of you. And also do cooking classes. If we happen to be out there, my first class is always about the dandelion, because my life has been a wonderful journey regarding the dandelion. Fadiah's had my food because I do cooking classes for the time bank as well, and other places around the city. At least 2 or 3 cooking classes a week somewhere for somebody. And my thing is to live up to my grandmother's promise, asked me to make sure no belly goes empty. So that's what I try to do. I give food away. I don't charge for food. I want my community to know that they can eat well and benefit from the wellness of the good foods that we introduce them to. So that's basically what I do. Oh, and it's just like I gotta talk about dandelion.
Yeah, of course.
Because I don't know from my dandelions.
Here's their dandelion den.
You're trying to get me a dandelion den.
Okay, yes, this is a collaborative initiative that we're very passionate about, is somehow finding a space to have the Brightmore Makerspace and Mama Raven's dandelion. No, you tell about the dandelion garden, but
Yeah, I'm trying to find some space where I can start an entire dandelion garden, because nobody has ever produced one before, because people always taking the dandelions and working away from the earth, when the dandelion is one of the most important, what they call weeds available to sustain people, to make people better, to make them, well, in case of different illnesses. And my life started as a dandelion when I was 5 years old. My grandmother and I would, forage the dandelions before my grandfather would move them down. And we had this fight every day with him about going down the dandelion. But what she did, she took dandelions and she incorporated them into a diet of collard greens. Every Sunday, she fed 19 people from dandelions and collard greens. So ever since then, my journey has been to promote wellness with food from the backyard.
So what's really interesting is Mama Raven's out on the Detroit Riverfront Greenway, and we need to have Mama Raven on the Southwest Greenway in the 27 miles of Greenway.
yeah, I know, right? More makerspace as well. These little
and
hubs.
the way that gets valued is by the connections that Connect 313 produces. So there's really a lot of commonality and purpose there, and I'm sure there's a story or two in Flint that would be replicable on, the story of Detroit and vice versa. There's a lot to be said for connectivity. And yet we're all talking about our own little version of it, when we should be perhaps thinking about multiple versions that coalesce into a much larger picture, a much larger story. But is shared proportionately by those who are engaged. Certainly Pontiac has, I'm a native son of Pontiac, a story to tell as well. So let's look at it from that perspective and see if talent, and boy, the talent that's represented this morning by our folks in Flint is compelling. And I think there's storytelling to be told. There's delivery of stories, and things yet to be unfolded and thought through.
You're absolutely right.
So
whatever you guys need from me, like I said, we're all aiming for the same purpose or the same point, is helping residents, helping the community, and helping everybody get connect to water, to electricity, to internet. And they all deserve it, and we have the right to collaborate and try to make it work, with all what we have. And I'm here to help in any way.
So we're going to take Pontiac at Connect 248.
Just closed it.
And Flint is Connect, Chico Connect.
Is it 810?
Sounds right.
Connect 810?
Yep, 810 Connect.
There we go.
And then we have 248 in Pontiac.
Now
Gotcha.
there's something
All right.
that the story just got larger for a UN proposition.
Do we have any thoughts back here, Mama Raven and Henrietta? Anyone? Any thoughts about what we've been talking about? Henrietta said the Flint water crisis is still under investigation, and she said, will it ever be solved?
In light of a Michigan Supreme Court decision this morning, State Attorney General Dana Nessel has declared the criminal case in the Flint water crisis officially closed. Nestle's efforts to continue prosecuting the case fell apart over the use of a one-man grand jury legal maneuver instead of traditional preliminary hearings for the defendants, including former Governor Rick Snyder. A lower court ruled that it violated due process, forcing the Attorney General's office to dismiss all of the charges late last year. This is the second time the criminal case against Snyder and other officials has been tossed. Back in 2019, Nestle herself dismissed the charges, claiming the investigation prior to that point had also been flawed. Now, joining us now is the former special prosecutor in the Flint water case, Attorney Todd Flood. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thing you have seen in these past several years with this case, is there any doubt in your mind that a crime did occur rather than just some mistakes?
Oh, no. I showed that a crime was committed. I mean, anyone that watched the case or read the opinions of the courts, I think it was Judge Crawford and a couple others, Judge Manley and Judge Goggins, that had the preliminary exams, said that our team proved this case beyond a reasonable doubt. Not that that was the standard, but in my mind, no. You know, it's like the weather person. You see a big storm coming, it's on the Doppler radar, right? And you have a duty to warn someone that that storm's coming, and you say, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna not warn anybody. I'm gonna tell them not to take cover, and people die, right? That's what happened here. There was clear notice that Legionella was in the system and was getting into homes. There was clear notice that lead was leaching into water systems, into individuals' homes, and they didn't give proper notice when they had a duty to do so.
No. If you were a part of this community, affected you and your household, your children affected by this, what would you do going forward? Is there anything to do at this point?
No. As far as the criminal case goes, no. No, there isn't. But, you know, the sad thing about this case is the city of Flint is hooked for $225 million in a bond that they have to pay for this pipe. And that to me is something that should be fought. As far as citizens go in the city of Flint, you know, the first and foremost is to make sure that there are proper pipes and that it's done right and that we have good, health, safe water.
Yeah. If God forbid there's a similar incident, a similar crisis like this going forward, do you think lessons have been learned? Will there be a different response based on this whole debacle kind of going off the rails here?
So this is a unique one, but we know, we already saw today, I think it was Redford, but we see around the state where lead is leaching into pipes and our infrastructure is bad. So there are really, really smart scientists and really smart water people that know how to make potable water. And these pipes we have out here, if they're protected and they're taken care of, they work, right? Yeah. You just have to know your chemistry, and you have to know how to produce potable water.
Whose stories stick out to you the most? I imagine you met a lot of people there in Flint who were deeply affected by this and always will be. What sticks out to you the most in your time covering this?
Being in places where I saw things you wouldn't think you would ever see in our country. Being with a mother that pulled the life support from her daughter because she had Legionella and she passed because of her organs breaking down, because she had other comorbidities. The fact that I walked with families to get water for them. I know this about Flint, and something that's going to stick with me. I have a lot of friends in Flint, and they're a resilient, beautiful, amazing community. They just need the support that you would get in Birmingham. They need the support you would get in Grand Rapids. Yeah. I really have formed and forged lifelong relationships with people that I love, and I'll stay with them forever. But I think this is one of those places where we have to, as a community of a state, as a country, we have to step up and make sure that they're healthy.
Yeah. Do you think this ever would have been allowed to happen in one of those communities you just mentioned?
Oh, heck no. No. Common sense, right? This is not gonna, this wouldn't happen in Birmingham. No, that's not gonna happen. This was about a city that was on the brink of bankruptcy. Detroit at the same time was in bankruptcy. The governor didn't want two cities at the same time in bankruptcy.
Yeah.
The emergency manager was in place. They were broke, and they didn't have any avenue to collect funds because the tax dollars were down, right? They cut the police, they cut the trash, they cut the lights, and they needed cash, right? So ultimately, they end up having to borrow money, $225 million, that they're stuck with through basically a cure for insomnia, a thing called an administrative consent order. And all that was just this mechanism to make it so the city of Flint was forced to use this terrible water treatment plant while they were buying and paying for the KWA.
It's a real shame, all of it.
It is.
All right,
So,
Todd, thank you so much. This is
thanks for
attorney
having
Todd Flood. I appreciate you joining us today.
thank you.